If you ever wanted how you could go from this by using this to go into this, stick around, watch this video. I'll show it to you so you can do it at home. Just received the sacrificial steering wheel. We are going to take all this cladding off and hopefully find that there's a steel wire that's in the inside of this, and that's what we're going to work with to fabricate a wooden steering wheel. So we removed the leather from this side of the steering wheel, which then shows this plastic stuff. And then when you take a knife to the plastic stuff, it exposes the steel hoop that's inside of it. And that's what we're after, because now with wood, we can mold a top and a bottom piece around that to fabricate a brand new wooden rim that will fit the steering wheel. And then once we got that all done, we can transpose all the switches and everything from the wheel that's in the car now onto this wheel, and then we'll have a wood steering wheel in the car. More period correct. So after a little elbow grease, we've got this rubber compound removed from this area on the steering wheel, and you're left with about a 1/2 inch or so metal hoop. And the metal hoop is rounded on this side, but when you flip it over, it's actually flat on the back, and then it's got this indent in here. So now that we know how the steering wheel is built, we can take that into our build plans for how we're gonna manufacture the wood pieces that are gonna cover this eventually. And there it is, completely stripped front and back. And that is what an S550 steering wheel looks like when you take off all the leather and the padding. As per the drawing that I showed before, we got 8 of these pieces. The angle that you cut is 22.5 degrees. So when you have a saw, then you set that to 22.5 degrees, chop this way, flip it around, chop the other way, get a piece like that. Then you need to make sure that these fit together. So you need to make the tongue and groove. So this piece, this is a little rough yet. Still have to sand that off. But when you do, you can fit these all together and you end up with something like this. Now, I just put this together, sanded the edges there. Still have to cut off these nibs. But you can see that, this is gonna come together. And then when you get your wheel, you can get a circle. So you need a little bit extra material around the steel rim, let's say 1/4 inch on each side. And so we can cut that out of this piece. And then for this part, because this is flat, we're gonna make just a groove throughout the whole circumference. And then for the opposite side, which is rounded, we're gonna take another bit, a rounded bit, like so. And we're gonna go and cut that in the other half. And then we can put those two halves together. And then we can take a half round, like that, and we go do the edges on each side and make it a nice rounded edge for the wheel. Just made a mark with a pen on all these little triangles, so we can take this back apart and then we can cut those little triangles off, and then it's time to get the glue all the pieces, and then get a band strap to go around the circumference of this and hold it all together. The easiest way to take care of these nose bits that are sticking out if you don't cut them off, I find, is just get a handsaw, put it flush against the edge here. Then you can cut your corner, and this will kind of serve as a guide, so that makes it easier. So you can, you can make it however big you want, but you got to make it big enough so that it actually disappears in the other piece. All the noses have been cut, so time to reassemble. Let's see what that looks like. Sometimes when you do a new project, you need some new tools too that you need to get this done. So one of the things is I bought a band strap. I bought some bits for my router. I also bought this piece that you hook up a router to so you can make circles. So the center pin goes in here and then you can pivot around that. You can also use this part here to make straight lines if you want to make, shelves in a cabinet or something. And then I also got the plunge router, which is going to be handy once I start doing the cutting of this, because we'll have to go in different passes to get to the full depth. Can't do that in one pass from what I've seen. And then down to something simple like a brush for the glue. This is a silicone, and you can use it to spread out the glue properly, and then you let it dry, and then you just rub it, and apparently it's supposed to all come off with no problem. So we'll see how that works, but nevertheless, nice little tool that I got. And now we're gonna glue up all these pieces and make a hexagon with the band clamp around it, and then we'll have to let that set up. Unfortunately, I only have one of the band clamps, so I have to wait to do the second one probably tomorrow. But this is where we'll start. Now, truth be told, I'm not an avid woodworker, so this is just something that I got in mind. I figured, well, it'd be kind of cool to have a wood steering wheel on the Mustang because it seems a little bit more period correct, and so that's kind of what I'm going for. So we'll see how that pans out. So that's the first piece right here. Guess I should use the brush what I got it for, and then make a nice even glue bead everywhere, and then slide it together. The glue actually makes it somewhat easier too to glue things together. Two at the same time. I'm pretty happy with this brush. Seems to do a pretty decent job. So if it's true what they say, that it allows for the glue to just break off, then that's a winner. There, we got everything aligned, and then we'll get the strap wrench and tighten everything up. And we'll have to let it sit overnight to dry. This is kind of nice. Now you can turn this handle, and as you turn the handle, it tightens the whole strap around the entire piece. The glue is starting to pour and squeeze out of the seams. This is a good sign, because that means the clamp is doing its job. Let this now sit overnight, as mentioned. Get this set up properly. Next steps that we implemented is we put a pivot pin in the center. So drill the hole through the wood and drill the hole where these lines come together. Made sure that that pin goes through that same hole to make sure it's center. 2 screws to make it tight to the wood. And now we have our piece that we want to work on in our center point with the pivot pin in one spot. Did a trial with the upcut spiral blade, and that came out real nice. So this used to be one piece. The spiral bit made a real nice cut, so I'm happy about that. And then the other piece for making the pivot came in. So this one is a little bit different, and the bolt pattern fit my router. So then the next step that I did was measure to the drawing that I had made on this piece of wood, where I laid the steering wheel on it and traced around it. So the inside of that piece of wood is 15.55 on my pivot. So I have to adjust it a slight little bit yet. And then when I move to the outside of the rim, I'm gonna have to move this to 19.15, and that will give us the measurement to make the circles. Now, the way this works, obviously, you got the pivot in the center. This is gonna spin around, and we're gonna make 3 passes to get the depth that we need. So we'll start about 1/4 inch, then we go to 1/2 inch, and then a little over 3/4 inch, as this wood is 3/4 inch thick. All right, so that is the inner dimension. And look at that. There. Less the noise, we now have a very nice circular shape. As you can see, there's a little groove in the wood underneath, so you gotta go far enough down, and that's, you probably saw me in the video kind of checking after I got on the 3rd pass, got a little bit in, kind of cleaned out the grooves just to make sure that I saw that we're in the white wood instead of in the mahogany. And yeah, once I saw that was good, then just continued on and made some nice circles. the rounded pass on the outside, which looks really nice, by the way. Really happy with that. Get you guys a little bit closer. See a nicely rounded edge here, nicely rounded edge here, and that goes all the way around. And there's a tiny strip of flat, which is really nice. Obviously there's going to be some hand sanding here that's going to be involved just to make sure that everything is nice and good, but pretty happy with that. Okay, we've done a bunch of homework for setup. One of the things we found out is that the front, as we mentioned, is rounded, and there's a center line here. Well, it's not really center because this piece is thicker than the back piece, except for where the spokes of the wheel are on the side and the other side. It actually, I don't know if it catches that on camera, but you can see here it goes up and then it goes down. So this is actually thicker, so I'll have to keep that in mind when we do the back side and make adjustments for that. The good news is that the front, the one that I'm working on right now, is consistent all the way around, so that's not going to be an issue. So we had the advantage of working with this piece of wood screwed down to this piece of wood when we did the circles, and now that we flipped it over, I can drill in the back because that's the face of the steering wheel and I don't want to disturb that. So what I did is the outer rim that I had, I cut it in pieces, centered the rim measuring from the center pin out to the edge on 4 corners and made sure that that's centered, and then drilled these pieces in place, constantly checking whether that's still doing what it needs to do. And then I made a mark on here, if you guys can see that, pencil mark or pen mark, and that's the depth that I have to go. So I did this on this scrap piece, made sure that I met the depth, and then that's set to go deep enough into the wood. So that is all good. And then because I have to do it in 2 steps, I did it on a scrap piece of wood again, the 1/2 inch. It's really too big, the 1/2 inch bit. I can see where I had that, which I did a trial on a scrap piece, and there's just too much play in that when I use the 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna go with the, I believe it's a 3/8, and with the 3/8 I'll have to make 2 passes. So just like I had an outer and an inner cut that I had measurements for, I also have an outer and an inner cut for these. In my situation, it's 17.5 for the outer cut and 17.2 for the inner cut. And between those two, we should end up with a fit that fits the steering wheel. So having the router on this without the plunger and kind of have to tip it in, I was worried that I was going to chip into the side and maybe make the hole too big. I just didn't want to have to deal with that. So that's why we got to the plunge base. So yeah, now it's a matter of routing it at the 17.5, go all the way around, and then setting it to the 17.2 and go around again, and that should give us the width of the steering wheel that needs to fit in here. I guess as they say, here goes nothing. probably saw in the slow motion. The vacuuming and routing at the same time wasn't a big success, so I quit that halfway through, or not even halfway. And then I had a little mishap at one corner here when I wasn't holding the center, and it actually started coming off the center pivoting pin, which is obviously not what you want, and then you lose everything. And there's a little chip on the inside here, which at the end of the day is not really a big deal, because that's on the inside, that gets glued, you won't ever see that. So now we have a nice hoop with a nice groove on the inside, and I'm actually very happy with the way this went, because this is where I had my most concern, is that this would mess with the lap joints that I had here for the wheel. Let's see how this lays in there. And there's a couple of pieces here that are not going to allow me to do that. This is these pieces here are upholstered with the regular steering wheel, but in the part where I was able to get it in here, it fits nicely. So I'm happy with that, and then we're gonna have to fight with these pieces here to make that work. But you can start seeing the vision, how this is gonna fit on there, and then I have another piece on the back, and then you can transfer all the control units and the airbag from the other wheel onto this, and it will look like it was always there. Hopefully, that's what we're aiming for. Got to secure the router, kind of walks over the table if you don't, so did that, should be good to go now. Now we'll have a whole wheel. It feels pretty good, actually. Okay, so just like with the other ring insert that we had to cut, the bit that I have is not the exact size of the width that I need. So two measurements. The inside measurement that we have it on now is 17.15 millimeter, and then going to the outside it's going to be 17.6. So between those two measurements we'll go around. I've set the depth of the plunge to the depth that I need, so that these two will meet and be snug around the steel rim of the steering wheel. And yeah, so once I made these two cuts, we should be able to get these more snug around the steel wheel. Although the top piece is going to need some modifying where the spokes are coming out. That's going to need a little bit of additional work there. Let's get these cut. And there we have it. Straight groove. In here. So sanding, let's see how that fits in the wheel. So same here. We have some pieces on the back here that we have to contend with. And yeah, so we'll have to figure that out. But first impressions, by the looks of it, it's a nice groove that will fit the width of the wheel properly. Well, a whole bunch of decisions later. Here is the wood front and back getting glued to the steering wheel frame. So I decided to not use that wheel. That wheel's got the built-in heater, so I figured I'd probably sell that wheel, make a little bit of my money back. Made some templates of the leather that needs to be put on the spokes around the push buttons and everything. So that's going to be the next thing. After this dries and I sand it to my liking, then it's gonna get the varnish, and then I'm gonna have to get some leather and glue and tuck those pieces in to make it the way I want it. Once I got to the point where all the woodworking was done, I got some mineral spirits to get all the dust and debris off the wheel, make sure it was really clean. And from that point forward, I've been wearing gloves, not to get any of my skin oils into the wood. It's been working pretty good, I think. So I'll be using this clamp to kind of hold the wheel steady. Making sure that I clean this off. That way, when I do touch it with the wheel, hopefully there's no pieces of debris or what have you in there. Now it's just a matter of, you know, it's not going to be a heavy scuff. It's just going to be a light scuff with the 1500, just to get some grip for the next layer to get on there, and that's all we really need. There, you can see most of the shine is gone. The coats that we put on there, it's trying to rough it up to adhere for the next layer. So, get my clamp back that I dropped. Next, I'm going to use a tack rag, and I'm just going to tack off the whole wheel. Then what I've done is I've used some tape around the spoke so I don't get the paint on the rubber pieces here that need to be upholstered. Okay. So that's the spokes kind of taped off. Put go down for a second so we can stir. For those of you not aware of this tool, this is a stir driver. In a special aisle at the hardware store. Stirrer driver. Write that down. All right, so what I've done is just kind of hold it in my hand for the backside. And I just do like the bare tip of the brush, very little. This stuff goes a long way. You also don't want to get any drips. And so it's important to not overload your brush with the varnish. Some bristle hairs in my paint, and doing a visual check for drips. That is the painting process, the way I've done it. And as I mentioned, when I get done with the painting part, carefully I go around and then remove the tape that I put on. And that's how I've done that. Hope that helps you guys out if this is something that you want to do at home. Again, it's all not super complicated stuff. You just have to be careful and deliberate about everything that you do. Again, for me, first time doing something like this. And yeah, pretty exciting the way it's coming together.